got audio this time, LG?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Did you see going through Ecamm? We actually had a viewer on Twitch tell us that the first time we tried to do this podcast, the audio didn't go through to the internet, and we confirmed that because we changed up the way we did things. And audio routing can totally throw you for your loop when you have a Rodecaster audio, which is not called the Rodecaster audio. It's just an audio mixer.
No,
it's called the Rodecaster.
We got the Rodecaster Pro 2, and then we've got the Rodecaster Video, and unfortunately, I had the Ecamm set to Rodecaster Video, but our mics are plugged into Rodecaster Pro 2. And that's why there was no audio on our first attempt to do this show.
We've lost a lot of people already, so let's just say that, working at a radio station is actually something that has made us pretty good at audio routing, I would say,
think
LG.
so. Yeah, you would think so.
But episode 2, you're no longer in the room with me. I'm just looking dead into the lens of a camera. It's one of my cameras, so it's like one of my babies that I'm looking at. But I go outside and see what you got. We're going to introduce a webcam page, but let's just jump right into it. I'm going to even keep an eye on it. We did a really great take 1, by the way. Just take my word on that. It
was beautiful. It was a beautiful rehearsal, yes.
Yeah. We're talking about NAB tomorrow, starting up in Vegas at the, what is it, 1 million square foot convention center they have in Las Vegas. It's legitimately too big to handle. It's unreasonably large, but that's part of Vegas.
Yeah, it's one of the few destinations you can take Elon Musk's boring tunnel to, the convention center.
Yeah, the Las Vegas Convention Center is wild. So somewhere within that wild building of the Las Vegas Convention Center is NAB, and within there's going to be a booth for the Blackmagic Design new products that they brought up. We'll bring up some of the older products and we'll try and be succinct about it because we got a rehearsal in, so in a weird way this isn't organic, but we're still going to hit some of the main points. I'm just being real,
That's true. That's true.
No. So let's just jump right into it, LG. The Blackmagic Design brand is something that if you're a more experienced content creator, you're probably somewhat familiar with. If you're an absolute beginner, it's probably not even for you. So, that's almost something that I feel like, for the most part, they do a lot of the really expensive things cheap, but they don't do a lot of the quote unquote cheap things cheap. So,
no.
Some of the price tags that we're talking about, like if you're someone who's getting your first camera or your first live stream setup, or you're just first in general, we'll start here. If you're first in general non-linear video editor, right? NLE, non-linear editor. So if you ever see NLE in the production world, that's usually what it means, non-linear editor.
I imagine most people's nowadays is CapCut. Honestly.
And that's such an interesting thing because for the longest time, all you could really do is trim videos and then put those videos together. But now they've done a really good job. I think there's an AI within CapCut that's solid.
There's a lot of things in there. There's motion tracking. There's masking. There's AI animated captions. I mean, they've stepped it up. CapCut is not not your everyday average editor anymore.
Good. And there is something to be said about maybe a more consumer-friendly editor, if you will. But like what we're going to talk about is they just announced DaVinci Resolve 20. So you can download DaVinci Resolve 20 for free to do the majority of your beginner video editing. And it's $300 after that one-time purchase. And one of the big things, it's almost a buzzword, LG, is AI. I think that's the big push here from 19 to 20. And 19, I feel like, has only been around for, really probably eight months, and that's about the lifespan of some of these when they're ready to jump up. But you look at DaVinci Resolve 20, you're not someone who uses Resolve. I use it sparingly for specific things, such as maybe the occasional color edit and audio edit. It's really good for voice isolation is one of my points.
I haven't used DaVinci Resolve ever.
No.
At all. I've opened it up, kind of clicked around a little bit, but no, I've never used it to edit a project, not once. I'm a Final Cut guy. I love Final Cut. Like DaVinci, it's a one-time purchase for Final Cut. So that this is a very good thing to compare these two. But I feel like DaVinci has a lot of features that Final Cut is lacking, especially with this new update, which we'll get into.
Yeah, so the big thing that I think that, we talk about AI tools, one of them is like a multicam editor. So we're doing a multicam broadcast right now where if we just recorded, from start to finish and we didn't do it live like we usually do, the audio editing, or the audio would help edit the video via AI is essentially what we're looking at here. So, it's not as simple as just throwing random footage from two different iPhones in at the same time. I think that maybe it is actually. That's the interesting thing about AI is it's something that can exponentially improve based off of how many experiments it's had and then the data that it can relay back and forth on what it's learned. So more or less, sooner or later, AI is going to make some of these nonlinear editors pointless, really, more or less, because a lot of people will just go with the AI edit and then, they'll make it very easy to say, a couple different other prompts and it's the vision that more or less you want. That's not too distant future, in my opinion.
As someone who hasn't tried it out, I'm interested in these AI things, especially this feature that Blackmagic has introduced in version 20, the AI IntelliCut. Editing for podcast, editing by text is a game changer. You can just go in there and literally edit out whole sentences just by deleting the sentence because it gives you a transcript of the entire podcast.
Yeah.
Everything you filmed, it'll give you a transcript of, and you can edit that clip down just by deleting the words in the text transcript. That's Premiere. I believe Premiere has some version of this already implemented, but there's just another feature Final Cut is lacking.
Yeah, and that's something that I think you're right. I'm pretty sure Premiere for a while has basically had a transcribed version of the videos. However, you need to, if you're actually going to use that, transcribe estimate, give it a very good look through. And that's probably something that's going to always be the situation. Like, for example, my name's Karl with a K, and you don't want the audio transcribation to say Karl with a C, for example. Transcribation is not a word. Maybe it is.
It is now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thank you. It came out of my mouth. I said it, right? That's how words get created.
That's one thing that the AI for the the animated subtitles, the speech to text recognition, there's no way for them to tell that you're Karl with the K. It's kind of hard to tell, but I figure if you correct it once, the AI should learn that, he corrected that in the first paragraph, so now all the rest should go to K. I mean, it's AI, right?
Yeah.
It should be intelligent enough to realize that.
That's an interesting, if nothing else, addition to what the AI model almost... I don't understand AI to this point, but I do know that AI is essentially like the big thing that it's a big deal for XAI to basically have acquired Twitter is that essentially any of the terms and services we agreed to about those tweets basically belonging to Twitter, and they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, to teach their AI, yes.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if Twitter's the best place to learn from. I feel like that's the worst side of humanity sometimes. But it is something that will essentially exponentially change, if nothing else.
Twitter will.
Yeah. It's no longer called, what is it, X now? So you
something
gotta,
like that.
Yeah. Like, it still tweets, even though it says post. I tweeted out this live video. But my regression back to the reason you would want to have that ability is to find, like, for example, we're recording this podcast. Excuse me. I have a cough. Use that.
I could delete that cough part in the text transcript, and it would delete that from the whole video. Right
just
there.
look
it already
up, like,
cut it out.
I meant to use my cough button, and you search cough. Yeah, no, it's like, in a sports broadcasting world, if I ever say side out to describe a sidelines out of bounds play in basketball, someone who has to look up every side out can start there, if nothing else.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. You're right. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. You could find every single side out that way, or anything you're looking for.
Every time.
Especially if there's a play-by-play guy describing what's going on, because that gives you that opens up a whole Pandora's box of AI searching.
right?
Just to find points in a video.
For example, you could just like look up like if you want to find Tim Duncan's best hits when he had 40 points some game, and just look up Duncan. Over the course of a 2.5 hour video, you see all the times Duncan did something, right?
That's true. Yep.
You know, and the broadcaster said that. We're also getting to the point, and this is where my, you know, we'll wrap it up and go back to DaVinci Resolve. But like one of the interesting things about what I'm doing is there's a lot of player tracking happening at the higher levels. So as a play-by-play broadcaster, I feel like there's going to be a good chunk of time where my human element is almost learned by AI. And eventually, maybe it's 20 years from now, our play-by-play broadcasters are AI. And the only reason we're really going with them is because they're better, because they're just have access to the player tracking cameras, you know? Like,
well, and instant access to historical stats.
yeah.
You know?
Immediately, like they have done more prep work than I'll ever be able to do because they're an AI that has access to the internet. Like it's
are you hoping for this?
The
demise of your industry, basically?
So, like, you know, one of my favorite content creators is Owl Kitty. I don't know if I've ever sent you anything from Owl Kitty, but it's a black cat that the owner of the cat is a motions graphic design master at After Effects and Photoshop. So he straight can put his black cat into other movies. So this black cat is in, you know, Godzilla versus Kong and such. And he's lamented in his last several videos that AI is essentially going to replace his job. Like, he is one of the most talented people you ever see, being able to rotoscope and make it look entertaining as something on a green screen or you know, just a black cat into a movie. And he admits that eventually AI is just going to make him irrelevant, and it sounds like it's within his lifetime. And thus, someone who spent years mastering a craft that is legitimate art, you know, is just going to be replaced by a machine with algorithms that can do it.
So he's
better.
Basically just accepted his fate.
Yeah. It sounds kind of sad in a weird way that like some of these really talented artists are losing their jobs to AI. Like, music industry would be flooded with fake Drake music right now if they allowed it.
I already know people who are using AI generated music on their podcast because you know you can't use copyrighted music on certain platforms, and there's these AI things that just create songs, and they don't have any. They lack soul, if you will. The music.
It's so funny you say that because that's somewhat accurate, and that's really something that they can probably learn eventually.
It's like if someone took a math equation and was like, "I can turn that into music." That's what AI is doing with the AI music.
Yeah, well, and I feel like it's worth pointing out that that AI will probably never be worse than it is
that's
right
true.
now.
Yeah, it can only get better. That's true.
Like I feel like that's something worth pointing out when we come to these video editors is it might be better for you to learn how to control the AI to master what you're looking for than to necessarily learn how to do all of what's offered in Resolve, right? It's like, hey, I want yellow midtones, you know, and that coloring sort of will do itself, and then you can just tell it the prompts that you want it to do instead of I guess actually coloring yourself, and that's that. I feel like we went off on a tangent right there, but that's actually something that's very relevant in the future of video editing. You might, if you're just starting right now, putting 2 or 3 years of effort might be better focused on the AI tools than the actual video editing to streamline your process. Like you can learn very easily what in and outs are and assign those. It's not that hard to give some general details and then tell the AI prompt to like change the keynotes, and you're not doing any of that manually, you know?
I would totally take advantage of an AI color grader, color corrector that was decent, you know? If it was really good, I would totally use it.
That's what I mean by you need to be an early adopter, because maybe it's not good and you can make it better. Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's make that a video. Like the out of all of this, DaVinci Resolve is the best for beginners in the sense that the majority of what you would have access to as a beginner is free, and then it's $300, and it works on Mac and PC.
That's why this is the best entry level video editor that you can get that has pro features. Obviously, iMovie and Windows Movie Maker and stuff like that are a little bit more accessible. This has all the pro features you could ever want in an editor and more, and it's free. A limited version is free, but it's enough to get by to learn the basics of video editing, and I would have no problem recommending this as a first-time video editor. Just skip those basic ones and jump right into this one.
Here's the additional note, I guess, on all of this. As you become a video editor, you have to start looking at ROI before you start spending a lot of money. So the first thing that you're looking for is a camera, whether that's your iPhone camera or whether that's like a beginner level camera, which we kind of can go over that here in a second, because that's the next topic is cameras from this company, Blackmagic Resolve. They're more than just a nonlinear video editor if you don't know them. But if you're first time using a camera, it might not be worth dropping another $300 on a nonlinear editor when you have free options. And the other thing is, we need to do this too, LG. What do you think is just random question, maybe you know the answer to, what is the cheapest a computer that can do basic, functions on these computers is? Like, it's almost $1,000, right? Like, I'd say you probably get some good camera, like maybe 800, 700.
Are you looking at a laptop or a desktop? Because you can get a Mac Mini for $500 right now, and that'll run.
Buy a monitor, but yeah.
Oh yeah, you got to get a monitor, but monitor's cheap to come by.
Monitor and keyboard, like you're adding additional $100.
You can get those. You can get those if you need a keyboard. Give me a call. I've got like 5 keyboards in my closet just collecting dust.
That's our first viewer giveaway. Keyboards that are collecting dust, and I'm
sure I have a basic Logitech keyboard just sitting in the USB basic keyboard sitting in my closet right now.
If you are a viewer who wants a keyboard, I will pay you the cheapest shipping. So you're not going to have to wait a little bit longer. But if you are a viewer who wants a dust-covered keyboard from LG, I will pay for it. That's our first giveaway.
Yes.
Yeah, we said we're going to give stuff away. We're not going to say if any of it's good.
Leave a mention in the comments.
Yeah. So Resolve, honestly, if you're watching this and it wasn't what you were expecting, but you want to figure out how to be, someone who creates content for social media, Resolve is a great free video editor. Make sure that your computer's compatible. You were even saying that you don't update the Mac that you're using right now, so you would have to update it to use Resolve 20.
Yes, I would have to update it to use Resolve 20 because Resolve 20 requires Sonoma on a Mac, and I'm using a Mac Mini, the first M1 Mac Mini that came out with the M1 chip, and I haven't updated it. It's on Ventura, and the reason I haven't updated it is because it's been a daily driver for a video podcast that I've been doing for the last over 2 years now, maybe 3 years. And everything works, and I just don't want to change it. But if I wanted to use DaVinci Resolve 20 on this particular computer, I would have to at least update to Sonoma, which I've actually been considering.
If I saw that, if you were to go to like your about, it would be something like at least version 14. So what version are you on? Like what does your about Mac say? Like
I can pull it in over here. Here we go. Oh, no, I shouldn't do that.
No, I was about to say, maybe not that. But like,
I'm on version 13.7.4.
Okay, and I want to say it was version 14. So I'm on version 15. So basically, that's sort of where I was curious about what are the bare minimums. So now I'll have to wonder, because they eventually stop updating your older Apple products. Because I have a friend who has a 2016 MacBook Pro. Will their laptop be able to be updated to the bare minimum processing power?
So you have to go and look at what supports Sonoma if you're doing a Mac.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that was before that was back before the Intel changeover. They were all Intel back then, because M1 is built by Apple Silicon as of like 2019, I think.
Absolutely. Actually, this Mac Mini that I have, this was the first Mac device with one of those Apple Silicon chips.
So if you are just glossing over your eyes, we're nerds. So a lot of this is just basically content creator stuff. I have a company that's a production company that does live streaming. LG is just a veteran across all kinds of entertainment and broadcasting.
Started in radio, then got into television and live broadcasting. So here I am.
DJ
and then
LG.
podcasting. Oh,
Yeah.
should say I started in DJing, then got into radio, talk radio, I should say, sports talk. Then I got into video and whatnot, photography.
Yeah, I almost feel like I hope that this becomes a listened to, hey, this is where they started podcast. I'll just put that out there into the universe. And, we might actually just have you DJ some music while we do Twitch streams with some of our other podcast buddies.
We'll make that happen at some point. But, real quick to just
wrap up DaVinci Resolve.
To wrap up DaVinci, they've added the multi-layer compositing, which is basically like After Effects or Apple Motion 5, which allows you to do, like Photoshop for video. It's all built into the editor. You don't need a second program. To do this with Final Cut, you have to jump into a third-party program like After Effects or Apple's Motion 5.
Yeah, and it's funny how, in a weird way, the animation, motion graphics kind of things were never really designed to also be the editor, if you will, but good on Resolve to make it to where everything's within one software. That's, I believe, their goal. And they figure a way out to make that to where no one needs to go to other softwares or they don't need to offer other software. So I appreciate those kinds of things. And, the multi-user collaboration, that's something that I think they've already kind of had, but they're expanding. And the camera to cloud is something that I would really recommend if you're someone that has the crew where there's someone who needs to post something quickly to social media from a remote location where you can send something up the internet. But other than that, Resolve, once again, great. It has so many potential workflows that you need to find yours. And if you're just a beginner, just learn in and outs of when, like you trim video essentially and then put it into a timeline and make sure you have the audio assigned. There's a lot that goes into it. But I feel like if you've been on really any kind of social media recently, they do a good job of at least being intro level non-linear editors. And it's so funny because if I ever really need to put something out that's overproduced, I'll just jump into a non-linear editor than deal with some of the things like we were talking about CapCut when we initially got cut off. This might be a very good thing for somebody whose introduction is CapCut. Go to Resolve. So anyway, so they had a couple other things. Let's speed through a couple of them because we ended up going 30 minutes on that, I think.
Well, the animated subtitles, this is another thing that CapCut has had the advantage of having for a while. Final Cut added a very crappy version of this, so I'm hoping the Resolve version, it already looks better than the Final Cut implementation of this. I will use this all the time because right now my workflow for putting together vertical videos for social media posts like, Reels and TikTok stuff is to edit everything in Final Cut, export that into CapCut. I'll do a ProRes export, then import that into CapCut only for the animated subtitles. And I have to have a pro account, which is a subscription. I think it's like $20 a month.
For CapCut?
Yeah, for CapCut.
Okay.
And only for the animated subtitles. That's the only reason I use it, because it has the best AI animated subtitles I've ever seen in any program. But if DaVinci can get near that, this is what will make me switch right here. This right here is what gets me excited. And the AI multicam, which I keep pointing to it. Let me put it back on screen here. AI multicam has me excited as well, because that's basically what the Rodecaster video does with auto switching. You can take all your videos. Say you had 3 cameras. Podcast is a perfect example, perfect use example for this. It'll automatically cut the video according to who's speaking on the track and saving you a ton of time. Of course, you have to make little tweaks there, I'm sure.
And I feel like it's also worth mentioning that Blackmagic Design, like I talked about, is a basically step above the consumer. So I would say this is prosumer level cost of equipment, right? So there are probably the one thing we'll talk about their next product that they announced today and their past products that they have a solid line of is cinema cameras, right? So if you're someone who wants to shoot a scene where you're not shooting one actor saying their lines and then you have the same camera set up to shoot the other actor saying their lines and then you chop it all together, you just have two. In this particular case, maybe the PYXIS 12K, their new announcement, two cameras of 12K. Like you can really do some pretty magical things in terms of that AI to use the audio because you can have the, just audio set up to cut between the cameras and then you can adjust, we need to get her motion a little bit longer versus what he said here, etc. So
it's a time-saving feature,
very much so.
Time is money. So.
Very much so. And like I say, learn AI tools instead of maybe learning how to master how to do things manually. And so when we talk about doing things manually, though, nothing's ever going to really replace real-life motion capture video, right? So these...
Not yet.
Well, that's sad. But yeah, $5,000 for a 12K camera is something that I think would have been laughable if you asked about that in 2010, right? some of the things that like you look at that these cameras can do these days. Is resolution even really on your wish list of like what you would want from camera, more resolution? But that's what they announced today with the PYXIS 12K. So. LG, who is this for real quick? Like, this is not a first camera. If you're dropping $5,000 on a first camera, like, you saved up for a long time. Good for you. Don't go in debt for this.
The price is going to attract a lot of people who are first-time cinema camera buyers. I mean, it's priced high enough to keep out the prosumer. This is definitely a professional's camera right here. And it's $5,000. But that's just the body. That doesn't include everything you see in this picture here. That doesn't include that viewfinder right there. That doesn't even include the handle on top of it. Does not include the lens, obviously.
Well, I think we call it the brain. Is that essentially what we're calling it?
Yes, in red terms, yes, this would be the brain that you're buying. So you're just buying the box. But even still, this is probably your easiest way, your cheapest way in to something with this much resolution.
So, yeah, you have to really ask yourself, because on top of buying this $5,000 camera, I would imagine the memory sticks that you would need to buy, and we should have probably looked that up, I'm sure.
CF Express, yes.
CF Express?
Yeah.
Well, is that Type B?
It's Type B.
Oh, then that's relatively cheap, comparatively speaking. CF Express Type B is actually... you can find a lot of cards for a decent price on that. That's a little different.
All the Blackmagic cameras can also record USB-C direct to a SSD drive as well. So
and it's so funny. Not too long ago, I was using XQD cards to some of my higher end cameras, and I guess Sony invested in that.
FX9 uses XQD.
Oh, really?
Which just recently got discontinued, by the way.
Oh, it's officially discontinued. As it should be.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's actually a previous version of the 6K, and 6K is a little bit more realistic of a resolution, and you can find that for $3,000 right now, brand new. So that's one thing. The big news that came out today that's not part of their press release that you pointed out to me, LG, is that the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which essentially is a 6-year-old camera at this point, but still a micro four thirds mount, meaning the lenses are. A lot of really good lenses are going to be available used and for affordable prices new as well.
Yep.
Micro Four Thirds cameras are great. The Pocket Cinema 4K is $1,000, which I want to say is marked down 50% from where it was brand new, and it's still a really solid camera for content creation if you can get past 1080 output over HDMI, and I think that's fine. The no continuous autofocus, which in a situation like this, I think is okay.
It's fine. There's Micro Four Thirds. There's not a lot of great autofocus cameras in the Micro Four Thirds field. So
yeah, learn how to use manual focus really, but and maybe lighting because it's a smaller sensor. But for the most part, Micro Four Thirds is just fine, and every other standing. I think that this 6-year-old camera at $1,000 that comes with the full version of DaVinci
there
Resolve.
There you go. You get a full version of DaVinci Resolve with this camera, and this camera is no slouch. I mean, Micro Four Thirds, don't knock it. It's everyone's like full frame, full frame. You don't need full frame. There's plenty of lenses around that can get you nice shallow depth of field with Micro Four Thirds. You just have to know how to use the camera to achieve the look that you want.
And really, the funny thing is, you'd be surprised how even our, clean your lens of your iPhone and have proper lighting and a microphone, that's just as fine as anything, really. Like, the one thing that you would see in these Micro Four Thirds lines are really solid lenses for cheap. I don't think you would use it for the cinema cameras, but I love my 100 to 300, which is a 200 to 600 full frame equivalent.
Well, that's the other
lens.
thing. You get reach out of Micro Four Thirds. I would have no hesitation purchasing the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 4K Micro Four Thirds mount today as a first camera. It would actually be way better than the GH4 that I had back in the day, which was my first Micro Four Thirds camera. I would much rather have this one.
So if you have DaVinci Resolve already, you could probably save $200 on a pretty good used Micro Four Thirds, because the used market has to adjust to the new market. So I believe I saw Adorama had an excellent used Micro Four Thirds cinema camera 4K for $800. Yeah, you still gotta, if it's your first camera, you still gotta buy the SD cards. Make sure you get the right SD cards. You still have to buy a lens. You still gotta buy, a way to store the cameras so you can go on the move. That probably all adds up to another couple $100. But if you were to say, I have, $2,000 to start my video editing company, not only do you get a really good nonlinear editor in DaVinci Resolve, but you also get the Pocket 4K cinema camera. And you can buy, LG, if you don't mind looking it up real quick, what is the 25 millimeter 1.7 cost on Micro Four Thirds right now? It's probably less than $200.
You talking about the Panasonic?
Yeah. It's the cheaper one, not the
1.7.
Yeah, 25 millimeter.
25 millimeter.
Yeah, so it's essentially,
so it's a 50.
Yeah, so that's the funny thing about Micro Four Thirds. When you see these versus full frame, you just times it by 2 to get the full frame equivalent, and it's I guess it's
$250, and they got it. B&H has it used for $194.95.
I'm pretty sure this will occasionally go on sale for $50 to $100 off. I remember getting it on sale, but also you never know with the world of economics changing.
That's true, but even still, like, look at the price of the better lens, the Panasonic Leica 25 millimeter 1.4. It's only $700. You can buy it new for just over $500. That's a no-brainer. So you could have a very, very nice. Basically, it's a 50 millimeter because the crop factor on Micro Four Thirds is ×2, so it's a 25 millimeter. This is basically a portrait lens right here. This is an awesome walk-around lens. For $1,500, if you buy used, you could have a Blackmagic camera, cinema camera, and a badass lens for $1,500. That's a no-brainer right there. I used to say the FX30 was going to be the best entry-level camera for a pro camera that can give you cinema quality. But right now, I'm changing that. The price drop on the Blackmagic Pocket has made me change my mind.
And I think the biggest thing there is you get the DaVinci Resolve as part of the new camera that you buy. You won't get it used more than likely. Very, very rarely is it a case where you can get it used with the code that gets you DaVinci Resolve Studio, which is a lifetime ownership of the software, so you get all of the updates after. But the other thing that I think is good is it teaches you skill that I probably still wouldn't say that I'm anywhere close to mastering is manual focus. Like you have to just learn how to manually focus a lens, and I'm sure you're someone who manually focuses almost exclusively.
Well, yeah, the Sony has got me spoiled a little bit. So I manually focus anytime I'm operating a camera on my shoulder or hand holding it, unless I'm doing some kind of complicated tracking shot. I also now, I used to not do this before Sony got so good at their autofocus, but now for sit down interviews, since I'm using G Master lenses, oftentimes stop down to 1.8 or 2. I won't open it up more than 1.8 usually.
Okay.
But I have to have the autofocus for that, because if somebody leans forward or backwards,
yeah, it gets blurry quick.
It's going to get blurry, especially when your aperture is opened up so wide. So I have to use it there, and it took me a long time to trust it, but it's rock solid. And especially now with the focus breathing compensation that Sony has implemented, because another thing is focus breathing. The autofocus can be fine, but if you're moving forward and backwards, the breathing can be an issue. But now that they've got that compensation, I trust it. I really do trust it, but I don't trust it as much as someone who can manually focus.
Yeah, really, I've seen shows that rely on just manually focused set depth of field, and the real thing that ends up getting them is they move forward, and there may or may not actually even be a camera operator. It might just be a set camera operators, but they're laughing real quick on their move forward. They clap their hands, they're so excited and all that kind of stuff that they get blurred real quick, and then they sit back down in their chair and they're mostly in focus. So
that's true. I'm using autofocus right now.
Well, yeah.
And so are you.
We're on Sony cameras that probably aren't even updated to their most recent firmware. To be honest with you, unless you did that for me on
No, I haven't updated the FX30s, but the A7S III that I'm using on my end here, I'm pretty sure it's updated all the way.
Well, the funny thing about your cameras versus my cameras is I rarely get to actually use my cameras in terms of more often than not, the hours operated tend to be to somebody else. You've easily, by far, used my FX7 like more than I've ever going to use it.
Yeah, I don't even want to look at the operating hours on some of my cameras because they are astronomical.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing about my cameras is like they get used for 3 hours at a time, maybe twice a week for random amounts of months. So all of a sudden, like they have pretty low usage times. I'm not really collecting B-roll. Everything that I do is mostly live when I use my cameras. So it's a funny way we use our cameras. But I would say right now, 100% the AI autofocus. I give this to somebody and I'm scared of certain scenarios where it's going to be hunting for which face to focus on. Like, for example, at graduation, I had to tell my op just to move over to manual focus.
When there's too many people in there, autofocus on any system still tends to get a little bit confused.
Yeah, because it's not sure what to focus on, and it wants to focus on a face primarily. So I focus for one camera, one person. Gorgeous. You can really confuse it pretty easily. But it's funny that's just a skill that I think that not everybody is used to, mainly because we've all grown up with autofocus cameras on our phones. Like I feel like a good chunk of people don't even understand what autofocus really is. They're just aware of it, and it helps their everyday life on their phones.
You gotta learn the manual focus. It's like training wheels.
Can you manually focus on an iPhone?
You can, but I don't recommend it. It's tedious. But when you have a lens, you got to learn to manually focus on a lens. That's all I can say.
So that
fundamentals.
That's the one, I guess. So I should clarify, it doesn't have continuous autofocus. The Blackmagic 4K cinema camera, or none of those cinema cameras.
None of the Blackmagic cameras do, no.
So it does have set autofocus. So essentially, if you're like, I'm going to sit up straight, look in the lens, you can set it probably via an app. I imagine they have an app. Blackmagic pocket cameras.
Oh, yeah. They've got a lot of ways to remotely control them. Yes.
You remotely control it, and it matches with your ATEM Mini. So let's kind of wrap up. Let's speed through some of them and get all the way down to the ATEM Mini. Let's not actually click on anything else that they announced, because the ATEM Mini is probably the biggest thing that I think you and I would be most excited about as people who live stream.
Yes, they've introduced a new ATEM Mini. And
that's the old one.
that's
right
the
there.
old one. But if you look here, the new one is on top right there. The ATEM Mini Extreme ISO G2.
So the big thing there is it does look like it's tailored a bit more to professionals instead of beginners, which I think the ATEM Mini, that we talked about this on the podcast that'll never be heard, I guess. I thought that was a very great entry-level switcher because video switchers were very expensive and not necessarily, they didn't have USB outs. So these ATEM Minis were the first video switchers with USB outs. As someone who instructs sports teams, whether they're high school, college, professional, semi-professional organizations that don't have a large budget, these ATEM Mini Pros are great for those. And this seems to be a very good, I would say, HDMI version. We have to kind of clarify that.
It is HDMI only. I wouldn't doubt that a SDI version comes out pretty soon.
Yeah, and really, I would love it if they just, obviously they're going to have to exponentially increase the price. This is a $2,000 switcher that is worth it. It has 8 HDMI inputs. It has 3 outputs via HDMI. So if you are running an HDMI system like you and I currently are with these kind of hybrid prosumer camera style DSLR bodies, etc., we don't have SDI outs on our cameras that we're using for these podcasts, but we do have SDI out cameras, which has its pros and cons, obviously. But 12G SDI is something that, if you're familiar with it, it's something that is a bit more of a professional model. This is the bridge between professional and consumer, and that's
a good description of it. Yeah.
What would you say that if you kind of like scan through some of their features that they bring up, is there anything that stands out immediately that you really liked about it, other than the look of it?
Well, it's Thunderbolt. It's not just USB-C anymore. So they got Thunderbolt for record and playback, which is interesting to me because that shows me that there might be some more video playback features introduced onto this.
I don't mean to brag, but I talk to Blackmagic all the time about my needs as a sports broadcaster on a budget, and I said introduce ways for us to do replay on multiple cameras affordably, because at the time, new tech, what are they called, TriCasters, were the only real way, and I think that ecosystem itself was like baseline $8,000. So these are much more affordable ways to get into broadcasting, and it seems like they're listening to some of my sports needs that I suggested to them years ago.
Yeah, and also if you look at the picture of it here, it's got a more robust hardware to it. The buttons are actual the buttons you would normally see on more professional grade switchers. The ATEM Mini had these kind of like squishy rubber buttons that kind of like the Rodecaster pads are.
In a weird way, I like to go back and say that it felt very beginner friendly.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the way the buttons felt, and it looks like they've completely changed them on this new ATEM Mini Extreme ISO G2. The audio channels have actual knobs.
That's great.
To adjust them, physical knobs. I'm all about physical buttons. I know you drive a Tesla, Karl, so you don't like physical buttons on your stuff, but I do like physical buttons. No touch screens here. And look at that one addition there that just it excites me just looking at.
The tally bar?
The T-bar. Yes, the T-bar, the transition bar that they've added to that. It's not an actual bar, it's more like a fader. Looks like an audio fader, but it's a fader. It's a physical fader. And on the ATEM before, on all the minis before, all you had was the auto button, which you could set a timing to that. But sometimes you want to stop in the middle of a transition, right in the middle, before it continues on. And with that, you can control it 100% manually.
Which I think you could do in the back end of the Blackmagic ATEM Mini software, but at the same time, that was
who wants to dive that deep,
And you don't get the actual feel of like you say, a manual switch sometimes. So You know, that the build obviously is like, I feel like, again, I almost go back to when you're a beginner, sometimes you just get intimidated, right? So I feel like it does have a little bit more intimidative. You're in a control room that you would see closer to, like, what's that, a TV station?
Yeah,
like
it's definitely more like that.
That's almost what they're going for, to save real estate, because like you mentioned, those big buttons that they had that were very easy for you to be like, oh, camera 3, camera 1. You know, you can switch by like going over these big obvious buttons. They've kind of converted to the more standard.
The standard switcher buttons, which most of them you can snap the little plastic cap off and put your own custom sticker in there. So you can have like camera 1, 2, 3. And you can have your name on the next switcher. You know, you can put whatever you want on those clear caps there. Shout out to JC, who's up in the chat right now. What's up, bud?
Which chat is that?
The YouTube chat.
Oh, okay.
JC's up in here. Says, "Hey, bud."
Oh, I just accidentally sent that out over the air. Okay, I'll have to find a way to get into the chat. You know, we had that. We didn't expect too many people to join us live, but thank you for joining us, JC. So anyway, there was one more feature, but I don't remember what it was. So
XLR input.
Oh, that's cool. That's not necessarily it, but that's cool.
Well, that's a game changer there, because all we had before on the other ATEMs were the 3.5 millimeter inputs, and we get a balanced XLR input on this thing. Next, it's taking it up to that next level from prosumer to professional. This is a professional mixer. I mean, you're spending $2,000 on it. You better be a professional if you're spending that much. Entry level, they don't even have it up here. Here's your entry level. This one right here. The ATEM Mini.
Yeah.
The Pro, that's a step up.
Yeah.
Then you got the ISO, which is the individual recordings. Then you got the ISO G2. It looks like they've discontinued the regular Extreme.
Yes, they also discontinued the original ATEM Mini. So the base model is now the Pro.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it used to be like a $300 for the ATEM Mini, which didn't have a multi-view output. That's the biggest thing, is they didn't have a multi-view.
That's the reason I didn't buy the basic one. You have to have that multi-view output. And so the new ATEM has 3 outputs, which are routable. So you can have the multi-view on all 3 of them, or you can have any camera or any input routed to the 3 outputs on the new ATEM.
Yeah, and I think that's very much something that's a bit more advanced, but for $2,000, you're sort of leaving the beginner level of what I would suspect a quote unquote beginner would really invest. So $2,000, you know, it is a bit of a steep price point if we're talking to someone who doesn't necessarily, you know, that was the biggest thing when I entered the production world, was I didn't realize the sticker shock that I would get for the entry level cameras that I wanted. I thought like 150 to 300 would get me a solid detachable lens camera body, new, with all the cool features. I was wrong. No, we talked about a $5,000 camera earlier, and we were amazed at that price point for its features. But like, you know, for the most part, you're not going to find anything in the less than $500 range that can really hold up to today. That's why we were so excited about the $1,000 Micro Four Thirds Blackmagic Cinema Pocket Camera 4K, right? Because that's a really good entry level price.
It's almost, I almost want to buy one just so I could dive into the Blackmagic ecosystem.
We both
100%.
We both have a very serious case of gear acquisition syndrome.
Yes,
but in a weird way, it would be a very good video for us to make for our like video content, because it's something that I think. I remember when I bought my first camera, and the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K was new, and it was $2,000, so it didn't have a lens. And Blackmagic doesn't make Micro Four Thirds lenses. They don't.
Blackmagic doesn't make lenses.
That's true. That's true. They don't make lenses. You're right.
They have a big problem picking a mount too. You know, they got L mount, EF mount, PL mount, Micro Four Thirds mount, but they give you options. So it's better to have more options than very limited options.
That's true. It's very interesting to see where they go. But my point being is Micro Four Thirds, even if that's your entry-level camera, if you will, for like actual higher-level production than what you're doing on your phone and modern features like 4K 60, I think that even if it's a little bit of a crop, like that's into Micro Four Thirds, you're not really going to use 4K 60. And the only other limitation is the output at 1080 on HDMI that I mentioned. But really, solid camera that we should probably at least try and see if we can find rental. I have Micro Four Thirds lenses because the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem, if you invest in that, I find the GH7 to be just as good of a hybrid camera that you can buy for money.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the Micro Four Thirds camera.
Yeah.
Nothing at all, especially in today's day and age with ISO and dual ISO and everything getting so good, noise reduction, log profiles. There's really not a bad camera out there right now, honestly.
Don't let the internet tell you that you need the newest, most enhanced stuff. Because really, like we talked about, hey, it's cool that we can shoot in 12K. You and I, LG, would never actually use that, have a need for it, I should say.
No, I would not.
Absolute
but
need.
I do see the people that would have a need: music video producers, high-end commercial production, green screen, VFX, stuff like that. And I wanted to say earlier, it looks like the Blackmagic has discontinued the ATEM Mini Extreme HDMI version, but the SDI version is still available for $1,500.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because the SDI is a little more niche, and it's also a little bit newer of a product, relatively speaking, to that, I guess, timeline. So maybe eventually it'll get the axe as they bring out the SDI version for this new video switcher they released today.
It's coming.
Yeah, and you know that's about it. Let's speed through a couple other things because they do have a couple interesting things that show you just how niche Blackmagic is. And I think if we start with that one you see right there, bottom right of your screen, it's just cloud storage essentially. Like you have really good options for cloud storage. I think that Blackmagic does something that you can buy relatively easily that will allow you to collaborate really well, and it goes up. Obviously, the more you pay, the more storage you get. But cloud backup seems like something that could really be used for a lot of remote workers. I think that if you want to get into color grading LG, it seems like a no-brainer of a remote home job, right?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Video editing,
It'd be great.
color grading.
I don't think I would have the patience for it, but yes. So this is basically if you wanted to set up your own cloud backup at your home or your business. It's basically a rack mountable 8-drive, probably RAID accessible, all that stuff. So it basically gives you access to 8 drives, and you can plug this into the internet and access it anywhere in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, like you and I were talking about it off air. I think Blackmagic Design is an Australian company. So
it is, yes.
Melbourne. Yeah, the Aussies are very far away from the rest of the world. So I'm sure that they had the immediate need to have other people collaborate with, their experiments. What else do we have? The Decklink IP100C. So really, I'll just jump into it. Decklink is a great PCIe line that they have that you can plug right into your motherboard or a expansion chassis. That has PCIe inputs that it can Thunderbolt out so you can get information to your computer from that chassis. That's its own video. I probably lost a lot of people there that are just like tuning in, like, what are Karl and LG talking about?
It's basically a very advanced capture card, if you will.
And I think that
capture and playback.
That's something worth talking about. They introduce new things, and especially a lot of them lately have been over IP internet signals. So a lot of this is just basically, if it's over IP, it means like we were talking about with their cloud storage, except a little bit more instantaneous. You can send video signals, I would suppose, across the world as long as there's solid enough internet connection.
That's true. Yeah, you should be able to. Kind of like SRT and RTMP is what we currently are some of the two industry standards right now.
I would suppose the big thing that you're looking into, what you would want out of, what we're talking about use case for IP is necessarily like how instantaneous can you get it? How much information can be sent? So this way we're talking about, for example, maybe one day, just straight fiber outputs over IP to where someone who's back in control room is, editing with very minimal delay, the shading, for example, for live broadcasts. So I want to say some of those, LG, what are the, it starts with an I that SAFC uses. What's the brand of that camera?
The Ikigami or Ikigami.
Ikigami?
Yeah, Ikigami.
I'm pretty sure I looked into their specs one time, and they send 16-bit information down the line of fiber. So I think that if you could ever really say that the bandwidth catches up to where we can send that down fiber, and the CCU is operating based off of what becomes a standard internet connection, that's where 2110 IP, you see that in general IP usage, I think, are coming in. So that's very niche. Like, you have to almost figure out your individual need for some of these products. The HyperDeck Shuttle 4K Pro seems like an interesting replay system, and that goes back to what I was talking about.
It seems interesting. I'm interested to see, like, they're highlighting replay here on the thumbnail, obviously, but you could do a lot more with this. This is a recorder. It's basically for all around a playback and recording machine for your live broadcast. It doesn't look like your normal replay controller, though, so I'm interested to see how DaVinci's replay system actually works.
So here's the very interesting thing, LG, that I'm curious about, because we talk about the Thunderbolt output over USB on the new $2,000 ATEM. If this is a Thunderbolt port as well, then theoretically you can send all 8 of those video signals from the ATEM into this HyperDeck shuttle, and thus you might be able to just switch between channels that you're getting out of that Thunderbolt and have essentially a replay lined up. So does it have a Thunderbolt input? It looks like the SDI inputs.
Yeah, I don't think it has a Thunderbolt input. It's got HDMI and SDI outputs, so no Thunderbolt on this particular model here. But it looks like it works hand in hand with your ATEM. So you would have this next to your ATEM Mini Extreme ISO G2, and the G2 has Thunderbolt. So that's how you could get it in Thunderbolt-wise.
Well, the thing is, I remember when they came out with the HyperDeck before, and the big thing, if I remember correctly, was you were essentially recording one camera angle. So at $1,500 to say that essentially what we're going to do is figure out a way to route one channel into the ATEM and the same channel into the recorder, and then that recorder has an output into the replay channel, which you have another switcher. There's ways to audio send that are affordable, because like I mentioned earlier, a replay system used to cost like 30 grand entry level, and then you probably still needed stuff. But in this particular case, I feel like they might be taking the long way around what I was hoping that it would be. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't something where if you were willing to buy someone who's on top of that camera angle, like in a small production broadcast, it's like, say we have 4 camera angles that are going to be our replay cameras, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how we would have to do it.
So I'd have to dive deeper into what it actually can do as far on the replay side of things. It looks like it's just a very advanced clip player and recorder.
Yes, that's
I don't
what I was
see
thinking.
multiple inputs for like it wouldn't be a good replay recorder for, the referees to look at every angle, because it doesn't seem like it records every angle.
And that's the big thing, especially for official replay, where we would want to be able to say this moment in time where the runner potentially beat the throw at first, right? Can we go from one angle to the other to see if he caught the ball before this guy, touched the bag, kind of thing. So in a weird way, I like their idea here. It probably has some use cases. I don't think it has the replay use case that we would hope it to have. That doesn't mean it doesn't have high potential. That doesn't mean we even necessarily understand it. So let's look into it a little bit more, LG. But off the bat, it doesn't look like what we expected it to be, which is a little disappointing. But it's good that they're trying to meet
it's
the
good
demand.
They're dipping their toes into the replay features, because that's something that's going to be in demand for forever. especially for live broadcast and sports in particular.
And another thing for us to check out is I think you mentioned to me that Resolve has a replay feature, which we would have to look into as well. But currently for the quote unquote affordable way to do replay, we just use vMix. We use that Thunderbolt chassis we talked about earlier in the broadcast. That'll have to be its own video where we explain it. So LG, before we sign off, what else stood out to you today? And I'm going to say the thing that I actually saw on Twitter among all these announcements was the film scanner. I think that's cool. Like I'm never going to use this. It's like $32,000 to buy this thing, by the way. But you can take your 16 millimeter film and like basically 2.5 times the resolution and scan it into digital. And I think that's really cool because film is making a comeback.
And I love their marketing videos here, because who doesn't want a film scanner in the middle of their foyer there, you know?
I don't know. If you're dropping $32,000, it better be a part of the home decor.
Like it's like a high-end audiophile thing.
Wait, can you go back to that woman's chair that she had at the bottom? Like what kind of chair is that? Who's sitting in that chair?
That's actually a trademark chair. Like this photo, you have to pay a license to have that chair in your photo. I forget the name of the artist, but it's a highly trademarked chair.
Who wants a lamp like right over their head like that? Maybe a little offset to the shoulder.
Somebody who has a film scan, a $32,000 film scanner mounted to the wall of their lobby.
Yeah, so I saw that, and as much as I'm never going to ever, I have no interest in ever using film. I don't have a film camera.
Well, look at this picture here. This is just like the entrance to their apartment building. They got a film scanner right there. Like it's like before you get on the elevator, you can scan the film you just shot on Panavision, Kodak, and Fujifilm right there.
We need to get someone from Blackmagic on to explain that to us, because I get the Resolve video editing desk. That's cool, but like the other two shots, yeah, that makes a little more sense. But yeah. No, that's really cool. I'm very happy that film is making some kind of a comeback, but also
it's never gone away. It's most movies are still shot on film, most of them.
Yeah, okay. Well, and that's the thing, is you're talking about big budget studios here. 32,000 is a drop in the bucket for them, because they're the people that are using film are probably very well funded in that sense. But yeah, what else do we have? Really, I think that's about it. There's a couple cool things. That's interesting. The ATEM micro camera panel. They introduced so many things that we actually didn't read into all of them.
Well, the ATEM micro panel allows you to control your Blackmagic cameras and shade them from the control room. You can control up to 8 cameras with one unit. So
that's phenomenal. And
that's for your V1 and you shaders out there.
Well, would that go with the potential of maybe working with their B4 mount cameras?
Yeah, absolutely. The Ursa broadcast would absolutely work with this.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah, because really, when we're talking actual broadcast cameras that are, we talk about large sensor formats all the time, like the PYXIS that we talked about was a little bit bigger than Super 35, but smaller than full frame. So it's somewhere in the not really recognized size, I guess. The broadcast cameras use 2/3 inch lenses, which are the Micro Four Thirds is double the 2/3 of an inch, camera mounts. So yeah, but those cameras also cost $10,000 because you have to have a lens and you have to have the body, and really then you have to buy the fiber adapter, and then you have to actually buy the fiber cable, and then you got to run all of that to a central unit, and you're talking about maybe $250,000 to $400,000 worth of equipment to make it worth your time.
We're pricing ourselves out at that point.
But that being said, all of that $250,000 worth of equipment, that $615 micro camera panel is worth it for your shader.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's absolutely worth it, because at that price point, if you're running a Blackmagic system, there's no question you need this. That's no question.
Yeah, there's probably cheap. They do have studio cameras, which are also Micro Four Thirds, that are probably
this is compatible. They're cheaper than that, but this is compatible with that.
There you go. Yeah, so I would say, really the companies that need to be buying Blackmagic cameras are basically schools putting on school productions teaching manual focus. But for the most part, like, yeah, those are the Ursa broadcast cameras and the studio cameras. Those are worth it. The only downside is their Micro Four Thirds line doesn't have power zoom lenses, but none of those larger format frame mounts really do.
No.
So,
you do have the option of an EF mount here, which EF does have some options for power zoom.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. It really is, when you get into the Blackmagic ecosystem, you have to really not be a novice, in my opinion. You have to know what you're setting yourself up for the future if you're investing any amount of money into, broadcast gear. But when it comes to your first camera, maybe avoid Blackmagic or buy that $1,000, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera.
I wouldn't say avoid Blackmagic, but if you have some Micro Four Thirds lenses, or you're already shooting with the Panasonic GH5, 6, 7, or any of the Micro Four Thirds cameras, or Olympus even, then it might be wise to stay within the same lens system.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I want to wrap up our conversation with, and we could end up going another 20 minutes here, but we talk about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. In 2019, it was $2,000, and I was looking into detachable lens cameras to be part of my sports broadcasting live streaming company. The big big reason I didn't actually go that way was, it was the most expensive of the three cameras that I narrowed it down to. The other two options were the Lumix GX85, which came with two lenses, which I ended up going with for a couple other reasons too, and the Canon M50, which was the cheapest of the three. And when looking at it, Micro Four Thirds maybe has an indefinite future. I don't think it's ever going away, but I don't think in 2019 we were looking at the full frame future. So then with full frame, I think we maybe needed a little bit more better autofocus. So you lose Panasonic and you lose Blackmagic because we talk about the autofocusing. Yep. So now if I were going back in time, I'll tell you a funny story, LG. I must have entered 1,000 comments onto an Instagram post for a Sony A7 III in 2020, 2019, like before the pandemic. But like I put in like 1,000 entries to try and win this Sony A7 III.
That was my first Sony camera.
Oh, yeah.
Mirrorless.
In a weird way, I was good with what happened going into Lumix for a little bit. I still like my Lumix cameras, but I ended up going with Sony mainly because of the autofocus. We've been on Sony autofocus here. Sony has so many other features, nothing that's really overkill. I like Lumix S1 for the 6K video capabilities, but I don't actually use that in a live broadcast. Overall, it would have been interesting if my first camera was the Sony A7 III, because I think eventually, now in this day and age, if I were to invest in an ecosystem from scratch, it would probably be the Sony E-mount.
Yeah, it would. For me, it would be Sony E-mount or possibly Blackmagic. Honestly,
Blackmagic's right.
Blackmagic's
right there. You mentioned how they, their cinema cameras, they have 3 mounts available for their one camera versus Sony. You have to use their E-mount, right, or an adapter to use the, another lens or something like that. But so here's the thing. I'm using an FX30, which has a 6K sensor cropped into pixel density of a 4K image. It looks great in my opinion. The full frame FX3, and I believe it's the same thing with the FX6, maybe even the FX9, has just a 4K sensor, but it's still a gorgeous 4K sensor. But if you were to
FX9 has a 6K, that's,
FX9 is 6K, I thought so.
Yeah. So FX6 is a 4K sensor, and so is the FX3 and A7S III. So the FX30 has that. It should have a sharper, cleaner looking image when the lighting is good compared to the FX6 and the A7S III and the FX3.
So we're probably losing people, but I believe the big thing here is if you had a intro level camera that you had to recommend to somebody right now that you would be working with within your production company, you know, within what you and I have here with Broadcast Squad, which is mostly Sony, we would almost tell people go with, I would, if you have $1,000 roughly, the ZV-E10 Mark II, Super 35, that kind of has that Cinetone and 4K 60. It doesn't have a fan, so it could probably overheat if you go to 4K 60 for too long, but it's a good vlogging camera. And it's E-mount most importantly, and then you could eventually invest in full-frame E-mount lenses, right? So
I would say don't leave out the A6700 as well, which is basically
more
the photo-oriented version of the FX30, but it has all the same features more or less as the FX30, but a ton more photo features.
I was more or less bringing up the one I brought up because of price point similar to the Pocket Cinema 4K.
Gotcha. Yes.
So we're looking at $1,400 for the A6700. If you do want to jump a little bit further into like that's more or less a worthy $400 if you can stretch it. You know, we talk about how that's, you know, still maybe quote unquote a beginner. That might be something worth looking into a little later, and then you haven't even bought the lens yet. But if we were to look into, I'm pretty sure the Sony EZV-10 Mark II, right? It'll come up on my halfway guess. With the lens is $1,200, and it's the new 16-50, and there's a lot of versatility there. I think it's, in my opinion, if you're just doing content that's going to make its way to social media / YouTube, it's worth the only difference in the new version of the Pocket Cinema 4K camera is Resolve. Like if you don't have a nonlinear editor that you're used to using, then maybe then it starts to be worth it. But I would say that overall, the first camera that would be a great first camera is that ZV-E10 Mark II if you're looking at around that $1,000 budget area.
There you go.
And then from there, you know, I always say don't make an investment like that if you don't have a plan for an ROI. So go out there and, you know, because camera gear is expensive. So this leads me to all my other questions because we basically agreed on that one. You and I are a little bit further beyond having our first cameras now. So we're in the game almost, you more than a decade, me almost a decade, I guess, relatively speaking, right? So when it comes to, I'm not making a shot at how old you are. You just go back on camera age. I don't know if you were not shaking your head at that. Like you introduced me to cameras, so I kind of count 2017, 2018.
I go back.
I count 2017, 2018 is when I really got into cameras, so I don't want to give myself a full decade. But now we're at the point where you have an FX6, right? What would it take? And this is the wrap-up question, so you can go as long as you want, and I'll shut up after this and we'll sign off. What would it take for you to buy the FX6 Mark II from price point to additional features? Everything on the FX6 is the same, with the exception of these changes and additional features.
It needs to be a 6K sensor.
Output or recording and such like that?
No,
you don't care about.
I don't care about
6K?
that, but I need to be able to punch into Super 35 and record in 4K, 10-bit.
Yeah,
it needs to be 10-bit all around because if you drop down out of the XAVC-I codec in 4K to the XAVC-S codec, it's only 8-bit on the FX6. That should be 10-bit. So it should not shoot 8-bit video, period. I mean, that shouldn't even be an option.
In terms of a limitation.
Yeah. So the new one should have that. You got to get rid of the multifunction rotary dial, because that thing is it's not very precise. Get rid of that. Just give me the regular menu and joystick wheel on the side. Okay. Other than that, man, it's a pretty good camera.
Well,
it's a pretty good camera.
Does it shoot 4K 120? I mean, you don't necessarily always need that, but it doesn't do that, does it?
I'm pretty sure it does shoot 4K 120, yes. And it can shoot 4K 120, and it can shoot 1080 240.
Yeah, I like your idea there of being able to record 4K in Super 35 crop mode, so this way you
We
open
should
up
have
all
that.
those lenses.
I
want to
open up all those.
resolution.
Yes, I want to open up all those lenses in 4K.
Yeah,
because that's the beauty of the FX6. And you could also open up another thing FX6 has. It can crop into 16 millimeter, which that opens up B4 mount. So
interesting.
So that's what a 6K sensor would benefit from. Of course, you would lose the super low light capability of having that 4K sensor at 12 megapixels, because that's the reason it has the low light capability it has. So when you go to a 6K sensor, it's going to take a little bit of a hit, but if you throw the dual ISO in there, I don't think it'll be a problem.
I feel like you're just really eager to buy the FX6 Mark II.
I'm not. I hope they don't release it for 10 more years, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that doesn't seem realistic. But my thought is, like if I were just given like, $15,000 for a camera, I don't know if that I'm pretty sure that covers it with a couple lenses probably.
Oh yeah.
I would love the A9 III, mainly because of the global shutter, mainly because of sports. I feel like that would be amazing.
Well, the FX9 was just discontinued, so I do expect something to succeed that, a FX9 Mark II or FX10 or something. And who knows, maybe I can throw a global shutter in there, but that would put the price way up.
Yeah, but that's almost where I think, unfortunately, you do have to pay for advancements like that, where I almost wonder, a feature like that, a global shutter, it's so new that obviously it should be. And if I'm not mistaken, the original FS7 was around this price point, $12,000 with a lens.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's probably about fair, especially if you throw in a global shutter. I would like the ability to record in 6K, maybe in 8K potentials.
Well, open gate would be nice. I mean, if it's got a 6K sensor, it would be nice to have an open gate mode, but Sony has never had open gate modes on any of their cameras. So I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon.
I like that from the Blackmagic we went over today. I like that from my Lumix S1, is that it has open gate mode.
Yeah, they give you all the features. That's one thing Lumix has.
Yeah,
all the features.
And really, I have no interest in buying a new camera anytime soon, but I would love to get my hands on new cameras. I feel like these are the cameras that I would almost want, is the ones that have more features and on par autofocus, because I think everybody's kind of catching up to autofocus. I think that was the big reason people went to Sony and Canon at first, was because they had the best autofocus, but now
they're all catching up.
Yeah.
They're all catching up. Sony's still king. Canon's probably number 2. Panasonic's right there, and I can't even tell you about Nikon because I have no idea. I haven't touched a Nikon in, man, it was like 2008. I had a Nikon DSLR for about 2 months.
It's funny. Those are probably the most entry-level detachable lens cameras, but they lack the most features. So it's sort of what, if you're doing photography, it'll do just fine.
Hey,
like really,
they bought red, so
and that's a very interesting plot twist, isn't it? Like, are we going to basically admit that log footage can be on the most affordable of cameras? I think that's where we're heading, essentially. Like, I'm pretty sure we have log on our iPhones,
We do. Apple has their own log, Apple log.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, I think that we're getting to the point where, I hate to say it, that sometimes you don't necessarily need to make big investments to get image quality, but
content is king.
Yeah. We even talk about how AI is going to essentially replace things. We need to get on that. Let's just make an AI persona that's an influencer for us.
Well, we'll let AI write our next episode or something like that.
Probably,
there we go.
Yeah, that might get us some viewers. All right, thank you, LG. Thank y'all for listening, whoever you might be, whenever you might be listening. We did decide to do this almost midnight as we wrap up on a Friday night. So maybe you're having fun and you're listening back to this sometime on Monday when you're feeling a little better and you're much more bored. All right. Thank you, LG. Talk to you later.
Until next time. Peace.